set, speed, and action.
My father taught me many things here. He taught me in this room. He taught me, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer.
Welcome to the Foot and Friends on Film podcast, discussing everything about cinema. Now here's your host, Nick Baylor.
Let me give you a little inside information about God.
I don't care whose nephew you are, who you know, whose dick you're sucking on, you're going out.
Welcome to the official podcast of Foot and Friends on Film.com, where we discuss everything about cinema. I'm your host, Nick Mailer. Pay attention, son. I'm giving you pearls here. That's right, folks. We have an entire episode today dedicated to Al Pacino. We're also introducing a new feature later on. We're going to be talking about the news, everything going on with coronavirus, how it's affecting the industry. Take your seats, grab your popcorn. It's time for your feature presentation. As mentioned, we are the official podcast of Foot and Friends on Film.com, where our motto is, any film you have not seen is a new experience. Today we're talking about Al Pacino, one of my favorite actors, legend of stage and screen. So without further ado, let's welcome John H. Foote. Alfredo James Pacino is a legend of stage and screen. He has received an Academy Award, a BAFTA Award, 2 Primetime Emmys, 2 Tony Awards, 4 Golden Globes. There's a lot to be said about Al Pacino, and we're going to go back to the beginning of the 1970s with his first major role was in a film called The Panic in Needle Park. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, Panic in Needle Park was the first major Hollywood film to really deal openly with drug addiction and the problem with drugs in this country. It's set in New York City, and Needle Park was where the heroin junkies used to go to shoot up. And Pacino plays a junkie in the film, directed by Jerry Schatzberg. And he starred in the movie with Kitty Wynn, who, like him, was a stage actor, a very good actress, who never really found her niche in Hollywood. She was in The Exorcist, but never did much beyond that. Whereas Pacino did. His exceptional performance in Panic in Needle Park attracted the attention of casting directors, filmmakers everywhere. Francis Ford Coppola saw the film and led directly to casting him in The Godfather, his next movie. It's one of the grittier portrayals of drug addiction. It's an ugly movie, and it's set in New York City before Giuliani got in there and cleaned it up. It's the Taxi Driver in New York City. It's nasty, but grimly realistic, and that's what movie audiences at this time were asking for.
Now, Coppola was met with a lot of backlash when he said he wanted Al Pacino to play Michael Corleone, right?
Hugely so. In fact, Robert Evans, the producer of the film and the head of Paramount at the time, said under no circumstances are you casting that midget. And they wanted Robert Redford, they wanted Warren Beatty, they wanted Jack Nicholson, they wanted anybody but Pacino. And Coppola had written a bunch of names down before he met with any of the studio heads. And it's interesting, every name he wrote down on that page was who was eventually cast in The Godfather. Marlon Brando, Al Pacino, James Caan, Robert Duvall, and John Cazale. That's who we wanted, that's who we got. And you know, The Godfather is a double-edged sword, because the Brando character is, for all intent and purpose, the Godfather. And Brando's only got 28 minutes of screen time in that movie, yet his presence is everywhere. I believe the title refers to Al Pacino and his emergence as the Godfather. He's in many, many key scenes and has got one of the greatest character arcs in movie history. He starts off as this idealistic war hero who wants no part of the family business, no part of the mafia. And yet when an attempt is made on his father's life and he realizes they're going to do everything in their power to kill him, he becomes part of the family business. He knows somebody's got to kill Sollozzo and McCluskey, so he does it in that great, great restaurant scene. And from that moment on, he's in the Corleone family.
Yeah, you read my mind there when you talk about his character arc. The first time I watched the picture, it's what stunned me the most is how someone can go from being so adamantly opposed to the family business, and then by the final scene, you're just like, wow, he is the family business.
Yeah, and there's so much, there's so much joy in his eyes when he's at the wedding with Kay at the beginning of the film, Connie's wedding, and he's happy and he's playful. And by the end of the film, he's not. He's given over his soul to this life of crime, and is ordering the murders of men. He's murdered men, and he's doing it because it's business. It's not personal. It's just business, and he's doing it partly for his father, but partly because he's really good at it. And it's interesting that somebody of Pacino's stature, he's not a very big guy, could project such danger, such menace in any of his scenes. It's just a remarkable performance.
Really is. The following year, he would reunite with Jerry Schatzberg for a movie called Scarecrow.
This is one of the gems of the 1970s that so few people have seen, and in some cases, so few people have even heard of. He plays a dysfunctional guy who hooks up with Gene Hackman, a couple of drifters, who forge a bond kind of like, I guess the best description is like of Mice and Men, George and Lenny in Of Mice and Men. And Pacino's character suffers a full-scale nervous breakdown, and Hackman takes care of them. And it's got some wonderfully poignant moments, but it's also got an undercurrent of violence that's just always there. The two actors are marvelous. And we're up for several critics awards, but it never really scored at the box office. It just didn't find the audience that it needed. And Pacino had another film out that year that audiences were flocking to see, which probably pulled them away from this one. But a good film, a good performance.
The other film of the year, obviously, is Serpico, where he played real-life cop Frank Serpico. Pacino's known for playing a lot of criminals, but this is one of his legendary performances as a pure good guy.
It is, and it was his first time working with Sidney Lumet, the great New York director. And Lumet is renowned for his work with actors. There's just something he does that brings out the best in actors, good or just starting out. And with this one, he and Pacino just clicked. They were just on a wavelength where they didn't even really have to say much to each other. They just knew what the other wanted. And you're right, he plays Frank Serpico, who blew the whistle on corruption in New York City in the 1960s and nearly paid with his life for it. He was shot in the face eventually, and they got him out of New York to Switzerland, where he wrote a famous book with Peter DeMaz that became Serpico. It's an outstanding performance. He's a true cop, an honest, decent cop who just wants to do good and finds that he can't because there's corruption everywhere. He doesn't know who to trust. He certainly knows he can't trust his partners. And as I say, it eventually nearly gets him killed. He was nominated for an Academy Award for it, his first in the Best Actor category. He should have been in the Best Actor category for The Godfather, but he was in supporting in one of those crazy category fraud situations. But he was up for Best Actor in '73 and did not win. Jack Lemmon took it for Save the Tiger. But Pacino easily could have been the winner with no argument.
Sequel to The Godfather didn't take too long to manifest itself. Now, both The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2 are based on the novel of the same name by Mario Puzo, but The Godfather Part 2 is sort of two narratives running side by side as we see the young Vito Corleone, Brando character portrayed as a young man by Robert De Niro, and his son, Michael, portrayed by Pacino. The story that Pacino's character follows was mostly, if not entirely, original to the film, correct?
Yes, it was. The De Niro character was based on the book. It's actually in the book, The Rise of Vito. After Michael kills Sollozzo and McCluskey, we learn all about how Vito came to power. But the Pacino scenes were entirely original. And in my mind, and I know you agree with me, this is the best work of Pacino's career. Again, radiates danger and menace, and also intelligence. This is a smart guy who figures out very quickly who's behind the attempt on his life. He can't quite believe that his brother was in on it, but he also knows his brother didn't know it was a hit, which is a real mystery as to then why he has Fredo killed. It makes little sense to me other than because he could. You know, that's why he does it. But just a brilliant piece of acting for Pacino. It's a magnificent film. You know what I think of it. I think it's the greatest movie ever made. And Pacino should have won the damn Academy Award for this. It's a crime that he didn't.
Agreement across the board on all of that. The scene that strikes me as so remarkable is when Kay tells him he has had an abortion, and people know Al Pacino of later years to be a very loud and bombastic, top of the lungs, projecting kind of screaming persona. But in this scene, when Kay tells him that she's had an abortion, you can see second by second all of the 5 stages of grief go over his face, and he does it without uttering a sound.
Yeah, you're right. And it builds and builds and builds to the point where he slaps her. He's like a volcano about to erupt. And he goes through the famous Dr. Kubler-Ross stages of grief and then explodes. And it's one of the only times in the film that he actually raises his voice. And it's frightening. It's really frightening. And he can't forgive her. He cannot forgive her for doing that. I think she says to him, one of her lines is, she couldn't bring another one of his sons into the world. And that's what he can't forgive, the fact that she would not bring another boy into the world, because that boy could follow in his footsteps, and Kay won't have that.
Indeed, she says, I did it because I knew you could never forgive me for it.
That's right. That's exactly so. Exactly so. Beautifully, beautifully written by Coppola and Puzo. They seem to put their heads together and come up with art. And Coppola has never managed to write anything this magnificent again. Or, you know, Apocalypse Now is a masterpiece. It's a great film, but he's never done anything on that level since. But this is his masterpiece, and certainly Pacino's.
Yes, absolutely. I would say Pacino's finest work, should have won him the Oscar.
Yes.
The following year, he'd reunite with Sidney Lumet once again to play someone on the wrong side of the law, although in a very, very different fashion, in Dog Day Afternoon.
And again, based on a true story. 3 guys rather, show up to rob a bank. One of them chickens out right away and splits, leaving the 2 guys to rob the bank. They go in, and everything that could go wrong does go wrong. They find out there's no money because the truck has come and taken it away. They realize the police are watching them right across the street. Sonny, Al Pacino's character, realizes that the guy he's with, Sal, can't wait to start killing people. He wants to start throwing the bodies out the door. So he's in so far over his head. And the whole thing turns into a circus when they realize the reason he was robbing the bank was to pay for his lover's sex change operation. So Pacino was one of the first major film actors to play a homosexual on screen. And that was a gutsy, bold move. And it's such a brilliant performance because there's so much intimacy between he and John Cazale. And yet we get to see him grandstanding in front of the bank, the famous Attica chant, which became a part of movie lore almost the moment we saw it. Just a great film. And again, another Academy Award nomination, another great performance. And it was becoming yearly. And we were looking at 3 actors emerging who were just doing stunning work: Al Pacino, Jack Nicholson, and Robert De Niro. Brilliant work.
Pacino's next film was Bobby Deerfield. You want to talk a little bit about this?
Well, Bobby Deerfield was the first time you recognized Al Pacino's limitations. All actors, I believe, have limitations.
Even Daniel Day-Lewis?
Well, look at 9. Look at 9.
Aha, touche.
Didn't quite work, you know. Yeah, I think everyone has limitations. Some people just do certain things terrific. I used to get into horrible arguments with a professor in university who would attack John Wayne because he had studied with Olivier. And I said to him one day, put Olivier on a cowboy hat and a horse and see how he fares. And he, no argument, because Olivier couldn't have done it. Pacino here plays a race car driver who falls in love with a dying woman played by Mark Keller. And Mark Keller was a German actress who had a pretty good run in the 1970s. She worked with Dustin Hoffman in Marathon Man, Al Pacino in Bobby Deerfield, and Bruce Dern in Black Sunday. And it just has no passion. It's such a muted, stepped-on love story. And at one point, Pacino has a line where he says to her, I just want to feel something. And I'm thinking, yeah, dude, us too. There's no chemistry between them at all. And Pacino just doesn't bring anything to the table. It's almost as if he was sleepwalking through the entire movie. I don't know if the director, Sidney Pollack, didn't challenge him, but Pollack has brought great work out of Robert Redford, out of Jane Fonda, out of Meryl Streep, out of Dustin Hoffman. But whatever went wrong with this movie went tragically, tragically wrong. And it was his first major failure.
Pacino is one actor who is insanely quotable for all of his movie roles, and the next film he did would add to that. And Justice for All, directed by Norman Jewison.
Yeah. And this is one of the first times we see him go over the top, you know, a little bit out of control with his performance. He was nominated for an Oscar for his performance as Arthur Kirkland, who is a by the book lawyer who ends up defending a judge, and the judge hates him. The judge is accused of a sex crime, and he figures he'll get someone that hates him to defend him, and it means he's not guilty. He'll get off. But partway through the case, Pacino's character finds out he is guilty. He's absolutely guilty. So Pacino is in a quandary. By law, he's committed to defend him, but his morality kicks in and he finds he just can't. And he's got that great courtroom scene where the quotes just fly fast and furious. And he turns on his client. And audiences cheered out loud. They cheered out loud when he turned on him. It was such a great scene.
I know there's this next film is one that you like to talk about a lot, but was a bit of a misfire when he worked with William Friedkin on Cruising.
Yeah, Cruising was interesting. I saw Cruising in 1980. It was banned in Ontario, and I had to slip over to Montreal to see it. A bunch of guys from the acting school zipped over to Montreal to see it, and it was very controversial at the time. And I think it's one of his best performances. It's kind of a muddled movie, but he plays a New York cop who goes deep undercover into the S&M homosexual world to find a serial killer. And while he's there, something takes a hold of him and he becomes addicted to this world. And at the end of the film, we're left wondering, has he turned homosexual? Is he now a serial killer? Because a young man he became friends with, very close friends, ends up dead. And the ending is very ambiguous. And that's where I think Friedkin got into some trouble because people were angry about the ending. But Pacino's performance is absolutely riveting. I mean, he is on the ball the entire film, and it's a very strange descent into a world that nobody had seen before. Friedkin shot on location in these bars, often without permits, to create the kind of insidious world, I guess, of gay S&M, and insidious only because we'd never seen it before. And it was shocking. It was genuinely shocking to see it for the first time. But his performance, I think, was great. I've always championed his work in the movie, and will continue to do so.
Should we talk about Arthur?
Only to say how bad it was. Another one where, God, what was he thinking? One, don't ever work with Arthur Hiller. The man's a hack. He can't direct. He's never, seriously, the guy's a hack. And it was just a bad story. I don't know what attracted him to it, other than it was a light comedy, and maybe he felt he needed to do some comedic work. But it was terrible, absolutely terrible. Again, a major bomb, and again, his limitations were showing.
I heard a rumor, and I don't know if this is true, but I heard a rumor that in his early days, Al Pacino took a crack at stand-up comedy, and I can only imagine what that must have been like.
That's interesting. I've heard that too. I can't confirm it, but I have heard that. And yeah, I can't see that either, because he's a talkative guy. I mean, I've interviewed him and he likes to talk. And I was at a party with Robert Duvall and Pacino was there. And again, he loves to talk, but I can't see him standing up and cracking jokes. You know, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, it's bizarre because he's so often the subject of material for comedians who do impressions of him. I just think the whole thing is it's sort of a funny idea in and of itself that he would do stand-up comedy. In 1983, Pacino gave us one of his most legendary performances, one that's idolized by countless hip-hop artists, which bothers me for a reason we'll get into. Brian De Palma's Scarface, which itself was a remake.
Yes, it was.
We'll talk about it. Yeah.
written by Oliver Stone. So you know it's going to be bombastic. It's going to be full of violence. It's going to be big. It's going to be bloody. And when it was released in 1983, critics crucified it, absolutely massacred it. But they all said good things about Pacino. And it found a life. That was right around the time home video was exploding. So you could rent a movie, take it home, and watch it. And I used to go home from school on the weekends, rent 10 movies, go home and just watch them 2 or 3 times and study the performances. And this was one that eventually I got and watched and watched and watched and watched. And his performance is absolutely riveting. It's magnificent on every level. The movie is big, it is bombastic, it is over the top, but I think it was supposed to be. I think De Palma was going for some grand Shakespearean tragedy, and he got it. And when, you know, at the end of the film, when Pacino comes out of the office, say hello to my little friend. I mean, it's funny, but it's not funny, because here's this guy with literally a mountain of cocaine, and he's betrayed everybody that he was told not to betray. And now they're coming for him, they're gunning for him. And it's become a legendary film, as you say, and is now, you know, studied in some universities in the United States that have film programs. They study this as a work of art, a work of pulp art.
Lots of rappers reference Tony Montana and, like I said, idolize him. And I can understand it in part because of the rags to riches story, the self-made man, the world is yours and all that thing. But the reason that it bothers me so much that people idolize Tony Montana is because if you take out that scene where he refuses to blow up the car with like a woman and a kid in it,
yeah,
this guy doesn't have a single redeeming human characteristic.
Nope, not one. Not one. And I think that was one of the reasons critics attacked the film, is that he's such a monster with that single exception.
Yeah. Revolution in 1985.
Well, this was so bad it drove Pacino from movies. He stopped making movies for 4 years.
Yeah.
Revolution was directed by Hugh Hudson, who directed the Oscar-winning Best Picture Chariots of Fire, and then made a really good film about Tarzan called Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, which was a really great movie. And then he made this, and it was going to be a great American film about the American Revolution. Al Pacino was going to play Tom Dobbs, who enlists after his son enlists, and they were going to fight in this great war, and the great patriotic statement was going to be made. Well, baloney. It was a piece of junk from top to bottom. It was awful. It was predictable. It was ridiculously violent. Donald Sutherland played a sadomasochist who enjoyed raping little boys. Pacino played Tom Dobbs with a strange Scottish accent that had a Brooklyn brogue to it, and his accent wandered all over the place. If you're going to do an accent, do it. If you're not going to do it, don't do it. You know, don't have it draw attention to itself by doing it poorly. And Pacino was a good enough actor to know this. It's just such a dreadful film, and so badly written. I don't know what he possibly saw in it that would attract him to it. I mean, he had his pick of roles. Why this one? Why do this movie?
And as you said, he didn't make another movie for 4 years until he appeared in Sea of Love.
Yeah, he went back to the stage and did a lot of Shakespeare in New York on Broadway and off Broadway. And then he made Sea of Love, a pretty decent detective yarn. A good film, not a great film, but a decent thriller. It was good to see him back on screen. Kind of a warm-up for what was going to come next, and a bit of a preview as to how his acting had changed. He was a little louder in Sea of Love than he'd ever been before. And that famous Pacino intensity, that quiet intensity, was gone.
Any impressionist worth their salt knows that you don't have just one Al Pacino. You got to have a couple. And because his voice has evolved so much. And like you said, you start to see it here, going from "it's not personal, Sonny, it's strictly business" in the 70s, sort of this high-pitched New York thing, all the way through Tony Montana and the ridiculous accents, up to, "Hey, almost foghorn leghorn."
Yeah.
So the local stigmatic, what are your thoughts on this?
It was never released. It's a 59-minute short film. It was never released theatrically in the United States. I think it played at the Museum of Modern Art a couple times. He made it with his friend Paul Guilfoyle, who showed up on CSI a few years later. But it's rarely seen. It's rarely seen. I've seen it once. I saw a terrible VHS copy, and never seen it again. Never had a chance to see it again.
In 1990, Warren Beatty decided to make a comic book film based on the Dick Tracy character. And this is a very, very stylized sort of graphic novel adaptation before they were a big thing. And it almost has echoes of Tim Burton's Batman to me, but Al Pacino plays Alphonse Big Boy Caprice, and he's got a lot of prosthetics on, and there's a lot to talk about. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm a big fan of Dick Tracy. I think Warren Beatty did everything right with Dick Tracy, and I really had hoped it would be a bigger hit than it was. His decision to use only primary colors in the art direction and costume design gave the film a specific look, long before Sin City or any of the other comic book adaptations. Beatty had done this, and the villains all had makeup on, heavy prosthetics, because they had that in the comic strip. They were ugly and disfigured. And Pacino played Big Boy Caprice as a combination Richard III and Tony Montana, and he's funny. He's funny. Watching him jiggle around the dance floor with Madonna, choreographing her dance scene and smacking her on the butt, telling her what to do. I mean, that was the real deal. And she was pissed. She was not happy that her boyfriend at the time, Warren Beatty, was letting Al Pacino knock her around like that. But it was all for the movie. He was nominated for supporting actor for that film, and deservedly so. He was terrific in Dick Tracy. The problem was he was so big in Dick Tracy, he's never come down. He's never, ever come down from the height that he achieved in that film. And it worked when he had the makeup on, because we had to have something other than just the makeup. But once the makeup's gone, we don't need Pacino to be as loud as he's been for the last 30 years. And unfortunately, that's what's happened.
And we're going to talk about that shortly. But for the moment, we are going to take a small break. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world of cinema right now. So it's time for a new feature here on the Foot and Friends on Film podcast. We're going to take a look at the news. Coronavirus is the big deal right now. We're all self-quarantining, and this is affecting the movie business tremendously, is it not?
Yes, it is. It's going to have a staggering impact on films for this year, and I think going forward. We've already had major studios postponing the release of big movies. Mulan,
No Time to Die.
No Time to Die, A Quiet Place Part 2, Wonder Woman is being pushed back. And not just films, but events. The Cannes Film Festival has been postponed until the end of June. And Hollywood is going to go, and looks like they're going to go into streaming, which if they do will change everything. There'll be no coming back.
Yeah. So it's your position that if they do this, you're going to start seeing theatrical releases in line with streaming releases down the line, like as a norm?
I think so. I think the same day that a lot of films are released in theaters, you'll be able to watch them online. And, the studio still makes the money. You have to scan a credit card or do something to pay. And it'll be likely the same price for a movie ticket. I don't know what it is, $14, $15 now.
Those listening, if this does happen, please, for the love of God, don't stop going to the movie theater.
No, movies were meant to be a collective experience. And I truly hope that it continues to be a collective experience. If you can't get out, if you're shut in, if for whatever reason you prefer to watch movies alone, fine, watch them alone. But movies were meant to be seen in a theater with 400 to 800 strangers. And if that gets lost, something terribly good will be forever gone. And I will mourn that till the day I die.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that. Couple of big names in Hollywood recently kicked the bucket. James Lipton, host of Inside the Actors Studio, died at 93. This was I guess not really a shock, but it was upsetting to a lot of people. Did you ever get a chance to meet him?
I did not. I did not. I was at a party once where he was, but I did not get introduced to him.
Were you a fan of the show?
Sometimes. I thought they often kind of glad-handed the actors. I don't think he ever went as deep as he could have gone with some of them. You know, all these people have a past, and I wish he'd have dug into their past and, you know, explored some of the rumors about Kevin Spacey and challenged him with them, you know, asked him point blank. But they didn't do that. They stuck with the easy questions, which is fine. You know, the program was watchable, and I saw a lot of good interviews on it. But I also saw just a lot of puff interviews too.
Yeah, there was definitely no shortage of that. Kirk Douglas, legendary life, legendary career.
A great guy, you know, and a wonderful actor, much better than he was often given credit for at the time. You know, his great work in Champion, Ace in the Hole, Lust for Life, Spartacus, and single-handedly broke the blacklist, you know, the famous 10 writers, the Hollywood 10 that couldn't write. He hired one and gave him a screen credit for Spartacus. And the writer said to him, "You'll be ruined." And he said, "No, we'll break this stupid list." And they did. So a really smart guy and a mogul in his own way, a mogul and a good guy. A shame, a real shame, but a great life.
Yeah, not a bad run at 103. Was it 103 or 104?
103 and lucid until the end. You know,
Yeah.
he never, despite a stroke, a debilitating stroke, he bounced back, and his speech was affected, but his mind and memory certainly were not.
Yeah, absolutely. With all the talk of the coronavirus, some celebrities have been diagnosed with it. Idris Elba's one, and Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson were a couple of big names to be mentioned first. It's my philosophy on this whole thing that if Tom Hanks dies, we're all doomed, and if he's okay, then we'll survive.
Good point. It's my philosophy that it's just a really bad flu, and the media has blown it so far out of proportion. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's fair, but we did have to mention it. All right, that's the news for this week. It's going to become an ongoing feature. If you guys have any other suggestions for recurring segments you'd like to hear on the podcast, please don't hesitate to let us know. Getting back to Al Pacino, I guess we have to talk about the most notorious movie that doesn't exist, according to you.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
1990, The Godfather Part 3 was released.
And I guess what I remember clearest about The Godfather Part 3 was sitting during the end credits, and my wife was beside me, and she put her hand on me and just said, just let it go, John, let it go. Because she knew. She knew. And I was raging. I was sitting beside her, vibrating. That movie was so upsetting to me because it bore no resemblance to the previous two films at all. And the Michael Corleone in that film bore no resemblance to the Michael Corleone in Godfather Part 2 at all. Pacino was bigger, and there were such ludicrous plot points. Think of this. He's the most famous mafia don on the planet. He goes home to Sicily, where he's always protected behind walls with guards around him. He puts on a peasant's hat, gets into a car, and drives his ex-wife around Sicily, unguarded, unprotected. I mean, it was absolutely stupid on every level. And I get it. Coppola had to rewrite the script because the studio wouldn't pay for Robert Duvall to be in the film, which was a dumb move because Tom Hagen was sorely missed. And it's just a ruination of a movie. It should never have been made. They should have pulled the plug. And Pacino, I don't know what he was thinking, but this was not Michael Corleone. There's no Michael Corleone we remembered anyway.
Makes you wonder what could have happened had they gotten Duvall.
Well, off the record, I've read the script, the original script, and it would have been something. That's all I'll say. It would have been something very special.
Wow, how about that?
Yep.
All right. Frankie and Johnny, your thoughts?
Yeah, it was a cool movie. I quite like Frankie and Johnny. It was based on the play Frankie and Johnny at the Claire de Lune. And on stage, the actors were much less attractive. F. Murray Abraham and Kathy Bates. In the film, it was Al Pacino and Michelle Pfeiffer. And it's an interesting little love story. Pacino, by now way over the top, never stops moving, never stops talking. And Michelle Pfeiffer is this damaged waitress who he's decided is going to be the love of his life. And whether she likes it or not, it's just going to happen. So he's almost a stalker. There's almost a creepy vibe to it. But of course they come together at the end. Nicely acted by both. Pfeiffer especially is terrific in the movie. Pacino's kind of all over the place, but it was an entertaining movie. It didn't stink, put it that way. I worried it would, and it didn't.
In 1992, Al Pacino would be nominated for no, sorry, hang on. No, yeah, I'm right. In 1993, for the year 1992, Al Pacino will be nominated for Oscars in both the leading and supporting categories. In the supporting category, for one of my favorite films, an adaptation of David Mamet's Broadway play Glengarry Glen Ross. Now, as much as I love this movie, it baffles the mind how Pacino is the only actor to receive an Oscar nomination.
I agree completely. Jack Lemmon should have been nominated for Best Actor.
Amen.
Alec Baldwin should have been nominated for Supporting Actor. I don't care that he's only on screen for 7 minutes. He should have been nominated for Supporting Actor. He's absolutely riveting. James Foley, the director, directed a film in '86 called At Close Range, and everyone kept waiting for him to do another great movie. This was it. And unfortunately, no one went to see it. Critics loved Glengarry Glen Ross, but no one went to see the damn thing. And Pacino's terrific, but he was the only acting nomination the film got, which was kind of a crime.
Yeah, you mentioned Alec Baldwin, and you don't care that he's only on for a few minutes. And the Coffees for Closers speech is sort of a go-to reference when it comes to great acting.
It is. And, I've seen so many actors come in with that as their monologue.
Yeah.
They'll come in to audition for a play, and that will be their monologue. And, I've heard it so often, I won't recite it because I'm a terrible actor, but I probably could. I've heard it that often.
Now, that same year, Al Pacino portrayed Lieutenant Colonel Frank Slade in Martin Brest's Scent of a Woman. This is the film that has given him his only Academy Award. He did not deserve it. I won't say for a second that he did. I kind of like this movie. I know you don't.
I don't, and I don't because of Pacino's performance. I think it's wildly over the top. I don't mind the story. It's a half-decent story that he's helping this young guy out. Chris O'Donnell has zero charisma on screen. He's never had it. He never will. Pacino is just so big and brash and vulgar and loud. And I just was so sick of it. 20 minutes into the movie, I thought, oh God, 2 hours of this.
Right.
That's exactly what we got. I don't know if Martin Brest lost control of him. I don't know if he ever guided him, if he ever gave him any direction. There's a lot of directors that are afraid of Al Pacino. How do you direct Al Pacino? And he needs direction. He needs a director to say to him, bring it down. And a few have done that. Mike Newell did it for Donnie Brasco. Yep. And Scorsese certainly got him in line for The Irishman, so he can be brought into line. But they didn't do it with this one. And why they gave him an Academy Award for Best Actor, well, I know why. It was a sentimental award. Right. But Denzel Washington gives one of the greatest performances in movie history as Malcolm X in Spike Lee's film Malcolm X, and he loses? Jesus Christ, I still can't believe it.
I'm definitely with you on that one. In 1993, Pacino would reunite with Brian De Palma for another film in the gangster genre, Carlito's Way.
It's a pretty decent movie. I always felt Pacino was kind of blown off screen by Sean Penn in this movie. Yeah. Sean Penn plays his lawyer, and he's a junkie, and he ends up stealing money from the wrong people, man, and it costs them. Pacino's solid. He's rock solid in the movie, and he doesn't freak out or yell or go top volume. It's a real solid, interesting piece of acting. Unfortunately, audiences just didn't go to see it. Critics had a lot of good things to say. I was shocked that Penn wasn't nominated for an Academy Award for supporting actor. He certainly should have been.
I know Sean Penn is one of your favorite actors, and he is brilliant in that film.
He is, and he is one of my favorite actors. We got to do a podcast on him.
Yeah, we'll do that soon for sure. 2 Bits. Anything to say?
Wish I'd never seen it.
Yeah,
I saw it at TIFF. I saw a couple of his smaller films at TIFF, 2 Bits and Chinese Coffee. Wish I hadn't. It's time I can never have back.
What are your thoughts on Heat, which I know is a huge film for a lot of friends of mine?
A lot of people love Heat, and I don't. When I was doing Reel to Reel, the TV show, my partner that year picked Heat as his best film of the year. And I just about fell off my chair because there were so many other better films. And again, Pacino played a loud, obnoxious, over-the-top cop. At one point, he gets out of his car to a crime scene and asks a young cop, what do we got? But it's not what do we got, it's what do we got, like that. And I just think, God, really? There are so many supporting roles that are really good and just not fleshed out in the film. Val Kilmer is terrific in the movie, but we never really get to know him. The one scene that does stand out is the single scene Pacino and De Niro have together.
Absolutely.
And it's the only time Pacino brings it down. The only time he realized perhaps, I better quiet down because De Niro's quiet and he's going to walk away with this scene. They're great together, electrifying together. But I've just never really been a big fan of Heat. I like Michael Mann very much, and he and Pacino, yeah, he worked great with him on The Insider a few years later. But Heat's never grabbed me like it's grabbed a lot of people.
I feel the same way, and I do love the scene that De Niro and Pacino share. And
oh, yeah, they're great together.
They appeared together. Well, they didn't appear together. They were both in The Godfather Part 2, greatest movie ever made. There's a great scene they share here. Later, they would make a crap movie and then a brilliant movie.
Yes.
In 1996, Harold Becker's City Hall was released.
Yeah, and again, just more noise. Big, brash Pacino performance. And by now, it's routine. It's what people expect from him. And it's becoming redundant. People are getting tired of it.
1997, probably one of my favorite movies, but definitely one of my favorite Al Pacino performances. He plays Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero in Donnie Brasco.
It's a wonderful film and a wonderful performance. This is one where I was absolutely stunned he wasn't nominated. And it would have been a great set of nominees that year. Jack Nicholson for As Good as It Gets, Robert Duvall for The Apostle, Dustin Hoffman for Wag the Dog, Peter Fonda in Yuli's Gold, and Al Pacino and Donnie Brasco. But instead, Matt Damon got Pacino's nomination. He was terrific in Donnie Brasco, just terrific.
You would put him in the leading actor category?
Oh, yeah. I mean, how do you choose? I mean, you certainly can't put him supporting because he was so much in the film.
Huh.
And I hate that category fraud shit. I think if it's like Amadeus, they're both leading actors. They both deserve to be nominated. So they were. It's like supporting. Both Pacino and Pesci were supporting actors. That's where they should be. So yeah, he should have been nominated for Best Actor for Donnie Brasco. That final scene where he's called away and he knows he's going to his death is just so tender and heartbreaking, and that's Pacino at his best, beautifully acted.
I love this movie for so many reasons, but one thing that makes it so intriguing to watch is that we're used to seeing Pacino in the gangster crime genre as the top dog. Michael Corleone, Tony Montana, we're used to seeing him at the top of the pecking order. And in this, he's right at the bottom.
He's got a great line where he explains to Johnny Depp's character who he is. He says, I'm a spoke in a wheel. I'm a nothing. And you know it. And that's all he's ever going to be. And he knows it. And you're right. It's a wonderful piece of acting and a very different role for him that worked on every level.
Yeah. My favorite line of the film is when they're in the car and he's about to go get the lion as a gift, but he's trying to explain to Donnie how all this works. And this would be echoed later in The Irishman, but he says, Donnie, in our thing, when you get sent for, you go in alive, you come out dead, and it's your best friend that does it.
Yep. Yep. And that's what he's walking out to when he leaves the apartment that night.
Yeah. Really, really great movie. Great performance by Johnny Depp, too.
Yeah. Yes.
Across the board, all the actors are great. That same year, he appeared in The Devil's Advocate, another big, loud, bombastic performance. I will admit it, I love Al Pacino as Satan.
This movie put me on the spot. I was at a party with Robert Duvall for his film A Shot at Glory, his soccer movie in 2003, and Al Pacino happened to be at TIFF that year and showed up at the party. So I'm sitting with him and we're chatting, you know, he's asking me how I knew Duvall and how far back they went, blah, blah, blah. And it ended up, I managed to wangle an interview with Pacino the next day about the film he was in. I think it was Chinese Coffee. Anyway, I go to the interview and we're going, you know, talking about films of the past. And I asked him about the volume and the bombacity and the bigger he became after Revolution. He said, well, give me an example. I said, you played Satan in The Devil's Advocate. And I said, I don't understand why this all-powerful character would have to rage and yell just about every line of dialogue. And I referenced two other actors who played Satan. I said, did you see De Niro in Angel Heart? Well, yeah. And I said, did you see even better? Did you see Viggo Mortensen in The Prophecy? He barely whispered, and it was terrifying. And he sat and he looked at me and nodded his head and looked at me and looked at me. And then he pointed at me and he said, you're an honest fucker. I don't know if I like that. And he said what he was going for was wretched excess. And okay, fair enough. It didn't work for me, but he had an answer. You know, he thought it out, and that's what he was going for. So whether it's right, whether it's wrong, that's what he was doing. And I think it didn't work for me.
I think I'm most comfortable with Al Pacino screaming when he's monologuing, and he's got a great one in there.
He does. He's got lots of great scenes in there, and it's a very stylish movie. It's got some great things in it.
Michael Mann's The Insider. I know you love this one.
I do. And, you know, not necessarily because of Al Pacino. What I like about Pacino in this movie is he's very much part of an ensemble. And he actually lets Christopher Plummer have the Plum role. Plummer should have won the damn Oscar this year for his performance as Mike Wallace. He's absolutely perfect as Wallace. And Russell Crowe is superb as Jeffrey Wiggin, the guy called out for the tobacco industry. It's a great look at 60 Minutes. It's a great look at television and investigative reporting in television. And Pacino, again, is wonderful. There's no unnecessary loudness in this movie. He's not screaming every line of dialogue. He's into the character. And a terrific performance in a really great film.
Talking about Al Pacino monologuing, we have to mention Any Given Sunday.
Yep, we do.
What are your thoughts?
Well, it's an Oliver Stone movie, so it's going to be huge and over the top and misogynistic and all about the boys. And yeah, Pacino gets to rant and rave and scream his head off as a football coach. It's probably the most realistic film made about football. I'll give it that. But you know, another noise fest as far as I was concerned. And it's not even entirely his fault. It's an Oliver Stone movie. And there was a point where Stone disconnected from doing great work too, and was making movies that were just wildly over the top. And this seemed to be the beginning of that.
In 2002, a director who would become massive, Christopher Nolan, made a little movie called Insomnia with Pacino and Robin Williams. What are your thoughts on this?
I loved it from beginning to end. And I thought Robin Williams was absolutely terrifying as the killer. Yep. I thought Hilary Swank was spot on as the young cop trying to get a handle on everything. And I thought Pacino was wonderful as this. He's a dirty cop. And he's been sent to Alaska to solve a specialty crime. And his partner gets killed. and he shoots him entirely by accident. And his partner knows that he's dirty. So it was a really complicated character study. And I thought Pacino was great. You could just feel the insomnia in him because he can't sleep. It's always light. It's during a 24-hour light period in Alaska. And so there's never darkness, and the guy just can't sleep. And man, he looked rough in that movie, but part of the character, he was terrific.
Yeah, it's interesting. Christopher Nolan tends to work with actors over and over again, and it makes you wonder. Hopefully, he and Pacino will get together again someday to do something.
I hope so, because they did terrific work on this one. And, it kind of came out of nowhere. It was, he had made Memento, and then all of a sudden this movie was in theaters. And I remember going to see it knowing nothing about it. Walked in, was handed the press kit, and there's Al Pacino, there's Robin Williams, there's Hilary Swank, and it was like, wow, all these, how do I not know about this film? And then really enjoyed it. Good movie.
So I'm looking at the early 2000s, and we've got Simone, People I Know, The Recruit, and of course, Geely. Where do we begin?
A lot of junk.
Yeah.
A lot of junk all through 2000. In fact, it's rare to find a good movie that he made in 2000. He did make a strange little film that's never been released with Jessica Chastain about Salome, doing the play Salome. And it's good. I have seen that, and it's pretty good. But there's nothing else that Pacino really did in that period that's worth talking about. And I'm not sure, other than his television work, Angels in America was extraordinary.
Right.
But again, a big, loud performance, and I'm not sure it had to be. But it was brilliant nonetheless. It was just such a stunning piece of TV that you can't help be swept away by the emotion and the genius of the whole thing, directed by the great Mike Nichols. But yeah, there's not a lot for Pacino from Angels in America up to The Irishman. There's not a lot he did. He embarrassed himself with Adam Sandler and Jack and Jill. I mean, that was the bottom of the barrel. That's as low as he can possibly go. Yeah. And I don't know why he agreed to make it. I don't know what he was thinking. I wish he hadn't made it, because it's forever on his filmography.
Pacino's love of Shakespeare made it to the big screen in 2004 when he appeared as Shylock in The Merchant of Venice.
Yeah, and I saw that at TIFF and quite liked it. He had previously directed a documentary, Looking for Richard,
right,
about staging Richard III, and he played Richard III, and it was very good. It was a real indication as to how much he appreciated and adored Shakespeare, and speaking in iambic pentameter. Seeing him do it in The Merchant of Venice was quite something, and he was a very good Shylock. This is a good performance, a really good performance in a demanding, tough part.
It is definitely on my bucket list to go see Pacino do Shakespeare on stage in some way.
Well, I hope it happens, but he's getting up there,
Yeah, he is.
And when they get up there, they don't tend to do a whole lot of stage. Christopher Plummer seems to be the exception. But
I saw Christopher Plummer in Barrymore, and it was amazing.
Oh, he's an amazing actor. Amazing actor. One of the great pleasures of my life was interviewing him.
And finding out he hated Sound of Music more than you.
I knew that. I shared with him how much I hated it, and we were instant friends.
Right on. In 2007, Steven Soderbergh made the third part of his heist Oceans trilogy with the crazy ensemble cast, and they got Pacino to play the villain, Willie Bank. This was kind of a fun little movie.
Okay, I'm not a fan of the Oceans movies. I don't know why. I just don't dig them. I've never been a fan of heist movies, ever, and it's not because Pacino's in it. They've just never grabbed me at all. And good cast, good people in it. I like most of them, but it didn't do it for me. One that did do it for me, again, back to HBO, a couple films there. You Don't Know Jack.
Right.
He plays Jack Kevorkian. And he also played Phil Spector in 2013. And I met Phil Spector years ago. And it was uncanny watching Pacino as Phil Spector, because he was that hyperactive, crazy guy that Spectre was. It was just a brilliant piece of acting. And he nailed him. He absolutely nailed who Bill Spector was.
Let's briefly mention Righteous Kill and how bad it is.
I don't know if there are enough words to explain how bad it is. Was there a script? I mean, or were they just given guns and told to go crazy? It's awful. It's awful. It's beyond awful. It was in 2008. It was the worst film of the year for me, and to have that cast and those people in that movie and be that terrible, I think is a low mark in the career of Al Pacino.
We're getting into the 2010s, and again, not a whole lot to talk about, but 2019 was a big year for Pacino. He appeared in 2 of the films nominated for Best Picture. He appeared in the movie that should have won Best Picture. So first of all, he's got a little role in Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, there's a lot of good people in this movie, and he turns up as an agent who's got career advice for Leonardo DiCaprio's TV actor, and he gives him the advice that Clint Eastwood got: go to Italy, make some spaghetti westerns, and that's exactly what he does. He sees something in Rick Dalton that nobody else sees that will work in these films, and that's where he guides him. And he's absolutely right to do it. He goes over there, becomes a big star, comes back, and he's likely going to have a career similar to Clint Eastwood. It's a lovely little performance, kind of a lived-in performance. He's a typical Hollywood agent, schmoozing and saying all the right things and getting the guy to do what he wants that's going to make the most money, so he makes the most money. What he did second that year was well, astonishing. You and I both know that.
We've talked about it a lot. Based on the Charles Bryant book, I Heard You Paint Houses, Frank the Irishman Sheeran, and Closing the Case on Jimmy Hoffa, a movie that finally united Al Pacino with Martin Scorsese. We got to see De Niro and Pacino share the screen together for a whole movie, and it's phenomenal.
It's just such a great film, and one of the, if not the greatest films of the last 30 years. And yeah, Pacino plays Jimmy Hoffa, and Jack Nicholson had played Jimmy Hoffa in the 1990s in a film called Hoffa, and was very good. But Pacino seemed to go deeper than Nicholson did. He just burrowed under the skin. And the bombast and noise that Pacino brings to so many performances worked this time, because Hoffa was bombastic and loud. And he portrayed the ambition and the greediness. That great line when he says to Joe Pesci, "It's my union."
Yeah.
He's dead. He's dead because it's not his union. The minute he made ties with a mob, he was finished. And he should have known that. And it's just a brilliant performance. And again, nominated for supporting actor. I thought, and you and I part company in this, I thought Pesci gave the better performance. I thought Pesci should have won the Oscar. But Pacino's work cannot be denied. He's wonderful.
I think they're both so great. It's kind of hard for me to signal one out. One couple of moments in this that I love Pacino is moving on what you said. When Frank tells him, Tony told the old man to tell me to tell you it's what it is. He has a moment where he just looks off to the side and he's like, they wouldn't dare. They wouldn't dare. Just the ego on him.
Well, and yet he knows they would. And yeah, the ego that he thinks they won't. And then Pesci telling De Niro, we did all we could. And it's happening. And it's gonna be De Niro that does it. And he knows he's got to do it. And I love that Pesci waits for him in the car while he flies to Detroit to kill him. And he's still there when he gets back. It's just such a sense of loyalty between the two that Pacino has with De Niro, but not so much the Joe Pesci character.
And that scene is true to the book. When Frank was getting in the plane, he says he could see Russell nodding off in the car already.
Yeah.
And the infamous assassination scene is played out exactly the way it's written in the book. The scene in this movie I've probably watched over and over again the most. And I remember I wasn't willing to wait till the Netflix release, so I went down to the Bell Lightbox in Toronto, got myself a ticket, saw it in the theater, and I remember laughing so, pardon my language, fucking hard when
the ranting
Pacino
scene.
is screaming at his underlings.
Yeah.
And I honestly think for this scene, Scorsese just told Pacino, he's like, you want to yell like you've never yelled before.
Yeah, I would think so.
And there's a great scene where he's like, he slams his hands down on the table. I wonder if he forgot his line. I don't know, but whatever it is, it works. It's unbelievable. It's the loud, bombastic Pacino at his best.
I love that De Niro walks out of that room like a petulant child. I'm not going to be talked to like that.
Yeah.
And they're like kids. I didn't mean you.
I didn't even see you standing there.
Yeah, terrific. Brilliant performance. If that's the last performance Pacino ever gives, then his career ends on a high note.
Absolutely. He's actually currently appearing in a web series for Amazon Prime called Hunters.
Yeah.
Which, have you caught any of this?
I haven't seen it yet. No.
I've actually heard good things. My buddy Rob, he started watching it and he recommended it to me. He says I should check it out. Actually, I want to give a shout out to my buddy Rob Patoma. Little piece of trivia here. He actually appears on every single one of our podcasts. That little piece of intro theme music that I composed features a drummer, and that's my buddy Rob. So shout out to Rob.
Cool. Thank you,
recently
Rob.
got married. Congratulations. And yeah, I guess I'll have to check out Hunters. But Pacino's storied career, like you said, if The Irishman's the last one, it'll end on a high note. Any final thoughts on Alfredo James Pacino?
No, I mean he's one of the greats, that can't be denied. There was a time in the 1970s when he was a king, an absolute movie god. And I'm glad he's come back with The Irishman. I'm glad he showed this generation who Al Pacino really is, because I think a lot of people were thinking, are you serious? This screaming maniac was once a great actor? Yeah, he was. And there it is in The Irishman. So I hope people during this time, this virus isolation nightmare, can go back and watch some old Pacino and see what he was.
There you have it, folks. Episode number 10. We're into double digits now. This was on Al Pacino. I want to thank all our listeners who've been tuning in. Be sure to spread the word to all your friends. Check us out online at www.footandfriendsonfilm.com. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and especially our YouTube channel. Click like and subscribe for this, all past and future episodes of our official podcast. Got some cool stuff coming up. We're going to be talking about the 1980s, spotlighting a bunch of actors and directors, but let us know what you think. Shoot us a message on the interwebs, stuff you'd like to hear on the podcast. We're open to listening and ideas. Till next time, see you at the movies.
And cut. Brennan.